Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Adiv and I still own a home in Atlanta, and we've been in the process of working on selling it, and the market there is pretty hot right now, so we've started to receive letters here in Dallas from random realtors in Atlanta, and they range in how personal they are. Some of them say, "Dear owner, we'd like to represent you." Some of them say, "Dear Adiv and Ilana." And there was even one that mimicked a handwritten note on a yellow legal pad, as if this realtor had gone to one of our open houses and been so overwhelmed with the astonishing beauty of our modest 3-bedroom bungalow in a decent neighborhood that she had to scrawl a note right there and put it in the mail to pitch herself to be our realtor. The thing is, we have a realtor, and we like her because she can do more than send us a form letter. She knows us. There's a relationship. And in this week's Parsha, we have the census, which at first glance seems to be very impersonal. It seems to be about numbers and lists of names. So the question is, how does it become personal? Well, I had some real experience with a census becoming personal teaching in the Learning Center this year. It was a Jewish identity class, and the goal was for the students to study their own family trees to learn more about themselves and the American Jewish story. One of the tools we examined was a census. And at first glance, it seems like a list of names and numbers, but I started pointing things out to them. For example, you can tell someone's occupation from a census. So if it said garment worker, they could then go online and do research about what was the life of a garment worker like in the early 20th century. It lists how many people are in each household. So if 8 people are living in your household in a New York-sized apartment, what do you think life was like? So it led to very interesting conversations about multi-generations living together and how different that might have been. A census can yield more than names and numbers. It can give you an idea of people's relationships to one another. So in our census this week, there's a really beautiful midrash, and the author makes a comparison to a king. This wealthy king, every once in a while, likes to count treasure. And the king already knows, down to the smallest brass farthing, who is present in the treasury. And it's not that the king is worried that someone is stealing from him. It's just that he likes to examine each and every gem and coin and admire its unique beauty. So too, God likes from time to take accounting of all of us, and he likes to admire each unique creation. So perhaps the census is about God's relationship to us. The Mea Shiloach, a Hasidic commentator, says, "I think it's about our relationship to God." And he notes that in the counting, the 12 heads of the tribes are invited to help Moses and Aaron count. Now, you could argue this is just practical. If you've got over 600,000 people to count, having 14 people count instead of 2 is better. But what he says is this: we have to do this occasional counting because people who are on the periphery, who don't know how to serve God, who don't know how to draw close to the group, the census is to make sure we notice those people. And the heads of those tribes are more likely to have a relationship with the person and know the person and say, "Hey, this is someone we need to draw closer again." So perhaps the census is about our relationship to God. Ramban says it's all about the community itself because they are about to embark on a difficult challenge. They're going to need to conquer the Promised Land. They need to know how many of them there are. And furthermore, he says you need to know what each person's abilities are if you're going to engage in this campaign so that you can put them to their best use. I had somewhat that kind of experience this week. I participate in something called the Rabbinical Assembly of Greater Dallas. Once a month, the rabbis get together, but the past 3 months, the meetings have been canceled due to low attendance. And as it turned out, I had this burning question to ask them. So you see that we're going through a search for an educator, and I'd like to take this moment to personally thank Stephanie Alad for her incredible leadership in the venture and all of the members of the committee who have participated. And I have nothing definitive to share with you today, but simply to say that the search is going very, very well. So I wanted to talk to my colleagues about it because the search didn't start out so well. We received applications from many folks, but the majority of applications, while people might have had some interesting experiences, or if we knew the applicant personally, they had some wonderful character traits that would make a good leader, most of the applications didn't have the level of experience and education that we wanted. And the question I wanted to ask my colleagues is, are you seeing the same thing? Have you also had trouble finding an educator? And is this happening in the reform movement, reform colleagues? And what should we as Dallas do about this? Because you see, if we can't find educators to fill those positions, then Blake doesn't have to go to religious school anymore, so we have to solve this problem. So what ended up happening this week, was some of the more senior colleagues on the council got together and said, we need to hold a meeting and ask people to attend and share who are we going to be as a group? What is it that we want from one another? How can we help each other? We need to become more than names on a list and numbers of members of households and synagogues. We need to become a community. So they held a counting of heads, and I did get to ask my question, and I discovered that indeed the reform movement is equally troubled by this kind of problem, that fewer and fewer people are entering school to become Jewish educators, and of those who graduate those schools, many of them are looking for jobs in Jewish community centers or camps and not synagogues. But now that's also not numbers on a list. That's become a personal discussion among the rabbis in Dallas. And Rabbi Knight had an interesting proposal. I don't know if anything will come of it, but he said, well, what if we started training educators right here in Dallas? What if we created some sort of grassroots program since we have master educators? So for example, if there's a wonderful public school teacher who'd like to start becoming a synagogue educator, but doesn't have the Hebrew skills, could we put together a program to train him or her? Which I thought was a very intriguing question, because then someone doesn't have to move to New York or Los Angeles for 2 years and come back to Dallas in order to achieve the goal. Back to the realtor. So my husband and I discussed it, but the thing is, Nancy was a congregant in Atlanta, and we're more to her than square footage and market value and closing costs. So we've decided to stay with her because we know we're not some name on a list that she's going down. She knows us. We have a relationship with her. Now, Ron Wolfson, in his most recent book, said that the reason people join synagogues is not to be a name on a list. And it's not to gain a Jewish education for the most part, because you can do that on the internet or with individual tutors. And it's not to have a spiritual experience, because you can go for a nice hike in the woods or go to your daily yoga class. For him, what it boiled down to is people join synagogues because they're looking for community. They don't want to be names and numbers on a list. And I've been in contact with Camp Young Judea, and we're talking about doing a retreat for our community in November. And one thing I'd really like to do as part of this retreat is, of course, invite all of the people who are Shabbat regulars and in our Learning Center and on our Social Action Committee and board. That's wonderful. But I'd like to do a campaign to reach out to the periphery, because I had an experience this week of doing my own census. I was sitting with one of our vice presidents. We need to find a chair for a committee, and we were flipping through the directory to help inspire us with names. And I realized that after 11 months, I still don't know as many people as I would like to know in the directory. So when we go on this retreat, what I'm hoping is that we can put together a campaign to call the people in the directory that many of us don't know and try to incentivize them to come with us, be part of the community, invite them in. If you happen to have a passion for this or some time on your hands and you'd like to help organize the retreat, I would find that tremendously helpful. Please come and talk to me. And I hope that all of you feel the blessing of the most personal census, that you don't feel like you're a name on a list. And if you do, please come and talk to me about it. Shabbat Shalom.